Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gifted woodland animals. I stole that. Welcome to Meet Your Makers, where we are talking to the people who design, create, and illustrate, and write, and frankly push our favorite drug, tabletop role playing games. Today, I have the wonderful, the charming, possibly immortal Elliott Freeman. Elliott, welcome to the show. There's no proof that you're immortal, but there's no proof that you're not.
I
Not yet.
mean, there won't be until it's no longer relevant to
And
me
yeah,
to prove it.
until it becomes a real problem.
Yes.
That's yeah.
But someone else's problem. So,
That's true. Yeah,
yeah.
at that point, who cares? So, yeah.
hmm
Uh, well, welcome to the show, my friend. Uh,
Great to be here.
could you introduce yourself? What would people know your work from? What would they know?
Sure. So my name is Elliott Freeman. I am a writer and developer. I've worked a lot with Onyx Path. Primarily, I live out of the Exalted line. So I
Mhm.
have been a developer for Exigence Out of the Ashes, Sidereal's Charting Fate's Course, and Abyssal's Sworn to the Grave. I've written on like over a dozen other things for Exalted 2, but I've also written a lot for Scion, which is obviously a little bit why I'm here today.
Mhm.
And then I've done just a tiny little smattering. I've gotten to like play around once in the playground that is Trinity, and then once more in They Came From. So
First question: why is it that Exalted players are the most intense people alive?
because we get bonus dice for being that intense.
Or just
Yeah,
it stacks upon stacks upon stacks, right?
so many.
That is that
Uh,
is that is true. Back way all the way back to the White Wolf days. Like I
mhm.
anytime I never really played a lot of Exalted, but anytime you always knew who the Exalted players were because they tell you. So
If you connect with Exalted, you are going to connect 102,000% with Exalted.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's if it's your game, it's going to be your only game,
Yes.
basically. That is
Yes.
absolutely the impression I've gotten. Well, let's start from the beginning, Elliot. What got you started? What introduced you to role playing games, tabletop, and that sort of thing?
So weirdly, I can actually remember the specific occurrence. Tabletop games were always something that were kind of like on the periphery of my awareness growing up, but I didn't really have the right kind of nerdy friends to, drag me kicking and screaming to a table to start the addiction.
Hmm.
Um, And so it didn't happen until I was a senior in high school. It was like my very last trip with our robotics team. And on a whim, we had stopped by a mall because we were driving in a van forever. And I bought like the 3.5 players handbook, like the soft cover version.
Hmm.
And one of my friends was like, "Well, let's run a game." And I was like, in the van and in the hotel room, and that was my very first introduction to it. And from there I just kind of fell down a rabbit hole, went to college, made the right kind of nerdy friends at college to drag me kicking and screaming into all sorts of other games. Fell into Exalted at some point, and from there just kind of got to dive really deep into both some of the amazing stuff that like Onyx Path does, but then also all the like cool things that are happening just in the TTRPG market overall now.
It is a great time to be playing slash working within tabletop role playing games. The level of variety and that sort of thing out there
Mhm.
is absolutely bonkers. So, and I think it's great that you started with the best edition of D and D. Uh,
Oh, we're
I
getting
think
spicy already?
shots fired, baby. I don't mess around. This is my show. I only got well. I was about to say I only got one show, but I actually have two. This is the only one I do by myself, so I don't have anything to lose. It's just me, man. Uh, no, I think that's probably because I started with free,
hmm
although I did actually technically I started with advanced, but it was back when I was young enough that I didn't know how I was playing, and I would just tell the older kids what I wanted to do, and they'd be like, "Oh, sure, yeah, here, roll this die," and very lucky for that reason. So from there, because
hmm
that's a little. How old were you around that at that point?
I would have been about 18.
18.
So
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's so. I think you might have been one of the older
Hmm.
introductions we've gotten here. So many people are like, oh, "I was 6," and it's like
Yeah.
Jesus. But so how did that transition to? How did it go from play to profession? Basically, how did it transition to the professional world?
So, I mean, the intermediate part is like that slow ramping up of homebrew
Mm-hmm.
and casual design and, just wanting to make cool things with your friends. I was vaguely involved on a little bit with some of like the homebrew that was going on a couple of different forums, like Exalted's old forum before it blew up in the apocalypse, or Giant in the Playground long, long time ago. Um, and played around with that sort of stuff. Started making my own little games that thankfully never escaped because they were not ready. um, and I think the transition to Exalted actually came because I was a playtester and um, a beta reader for a few things, and I really liked being able to participate in that design process. And I threw in an application around the time they were hiring a long time ago for Adversaries of the Righteous, which was going to be like this little like drip feed book where they would have NPCs every once in a while. And the developers liked it and they let me be a part of it, despite the fact that it was still very, very rough. Um, and from there, I just kind of, have had the opportunity to do bigger and bigger stuff each time around. So.
That's excellent. What would you say was, if that's your start, where would you say is the piece that you were a part of where you were like, I've arrived, like I feel okay, this is how I want to represent myself as a developer and a writer.
So when I was brought on to be the developer of Siderial's Charting Fates course with my friend Vance, that was my moment where I was like, okay, yeah, I've definitely arrived because it was my first time that I was developing a project that I was on from the ground floor that I got to help like chart the entire course of.
Yeah.
Um, and it was Sidereals have always been like my favorite splat in the entire line. So being able to take some of that enthusiasm that I had spent for years and years and years for them and help make a better vision of, or not a better vision, but a I will say, I'll go to bat for a more playable vision of
Yeah, there
like
you go.
their aspects of the setting. Um,
Very
because we are
diplomatic.
building off, well, we have the opportunity to build off the work that other people have done, and like
Absolutely.
being able to iterate like that, you can do stuff that they couldn't have because they were busy, laying the foundation for it. So once they've created that, then there's more room for later generations to, really focus on making it a fully developed play space.
Hmm.
And so that I think is the moment when I felt like, yeah, I've definitely arrived. I feel like I've contributed something to this game and made something that I'm proud of.
I think that's great. I always loved within most TTRPGs the fact that there's always it always feels like there's a section in most books where they're like, hey, listen, if you don't see a thing that you want, just make it, or just do it, just make the
Yeah.
thing. We want you to be creative. That's the whole point. And I think that makes it such an ideal way for certain kinds of people to express themselves and get into it. Now, that leads into a theory I have, and it hasn't always gone the way I thought, but my theory is that most game developers and game writers were forever DMs. Do you find that that's been your experience?
Yes, and happily,
Yeah.
like I like that role.
Mm-hmm.
I will say I was a forever DM, and then I only like a year and a half ago fell into the right group of people and got to be a player again and reignited my love for it just because it was that magical group of that everything just fell into place. But in every other context, yes, forever DM, happily. I love facilitating it for them. I
Yeah.
love like figuring out what it is that they want and then
Hmm.
starting to like weave it together. Um, it lets me be some sort of evil, scheming, cackling madman, but it's for what's going to make my friends feel happy and satisfied,
Yeah.
um, which undercuts the evil a little bit.
A little, but you can still add a certain diabolical flair to it that I think people
Yes.
appreciate. I think one of the best things about being a storyteller, being that person, is I always describe it as like, when you're wrapping presents and the
Mhm.
scissors start to glide. You're gonna just right. You get the player equivalent of that, where something clicks in a player where they're like, "Oh, wait a minute," and they start really flowing
Mhm.
with it, and I think that's great. Do you have a writing background beyond games? Do you do fiction, anything along those lines?
I do. So I actually have a master's in poetry,
Oh, lovely.
which means I make bad decisions with money.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah, yeah. And you don't have a
and
lot of it. Hey, I'm a playwriting major, so
yeah.
you're preaching to
Okay,
the
so
choir
you
here.
know the
Oh, I
pain.
know
You
all
know the
about
pain.
it.
Okay. In my like day professional life, I am a scientific editor and like writing consultant.
Mhm.
Um, and then I have done teensy bits of fiction. Probably the biggest one is uh something that may be coming up soon, that I
Ooh.
don't think I can say,
Okay. Okay.
but that I did get to do my first like substantial piece of fiction that I am really happy with. So
Very nice. All right, we're gonna keep our hands on the buzzer. We're gonna keep our ears to the ground on that one. Looking forward to that. Um, I thought, what's some media outside of games that inspires what you do? It can be film, music, literature, what have you.
uh
I'm
that's
nervous about the way you laughed at that, Elliot. I'm not gonna lie. You've put me on edge.
okay. Now you've just challenged me to come up with the most deranged thing that I could
I
possibly say.
know, I know, I know. I've just
Like
upped the ante.
what's that musical piece that's just like 3 minutes of uninterrupted silence?
Oh, the cage piece. It's 3 minutes
Yeah,
and 14
yeah,
seconds or something like that. Yeah.
yeah. No, I like to listen to that on headphones while watching Drag Race, and
Oh,
not the Drag Race on like VH1. I just mean like Formula One race cars.
actual
No,
racing. Yeah, yeah.
yes. No, I smile, I laugh because it's like such a big question of
Oh, yeah, yeah.
what media inspires you, and it's like
I'm
in
hoping
what
this eats up
context?
about 25 minutes, Elliot. So watch the clock. Is what I'm
Thank
getting
you for
at.
giving me parameters. I appreciate it. Oh, so
Oh,
honestly,
I've
it's
got I've got
oh yeah,
422 in the chat. Thank you. That is the name of the cage piece that you were referring to. 422.
gotcha. Um, I mean, like in context, uh, I do a lot of sci-fi. I do a lot of fantasy because I'm a nerd.
Sure.
Um, I read lots of nonfiction, which is kind of a requisite for Exalted, just
Mm-hmm.
because we're weird about like material culture and whatnot. Uh, Movies, TV. I'm a huge like. Oh, this is too big. You have to narrow it down for me. You have to
All right.
narrow it down.
Okay. Let's go with who. What are some? Because I found that when I read certain books, for example,
Mhm.
it gets me in the mood to. Paradoxically, it actually doesn't make me want to write fiction so much as it makes me want to work on a game or something along those lines. Are there any authors that are like that for you?
Authors. Actually, yes, in terms of write a game,
Mm-hmm.
like one of my comfort series of fantasy, and one of the ones that really like got me into the genre in the first place is called the Old Kingdom series by Garth Nix.
Okay.
Uh, and it's about like a family of necromancers, but their job is actually to exorcise the undead rather than like raising them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a series that I kind of return to at least like some of the classic core books just because uh, they are they're kind of traditional fantasy, but done in a way that feels um, I don't know, not like too over the top, but also not too gritty. It's like right in that middle between yes, details matter, like the hero really enjoying a bath with lemon soap after like 10 days of riding,
Right.
but also being able to have these epic moments where you bind the destroyer of all things through the power of montages. Um, so that's one that I think probably lives rent free in my head a lot of the time.
That's a good one. I like.
Hmm.
I totally get that. There's got to be. We all want to try new things and read new authors and
Hmm.
new everything, really. But you've got to have your little comfort food
Yeah.
media like that. So Garth, you could do a lot worse than Garth Nix. So that's
Hmm.
great. So recent projects. Are there any?
Yes.
What are you working on right now? What are, or perhaps is the that we want to talk about? He said pointedly.
So I've been working on a couple of things right now, but the one that is probably the most relevant is obviously Scion Mythic Shards, where I
Okay.
wrote, yeah,
Yes.
where I was honored to get to write about like a chapter and a half. So
I think this is a really interesting book based on the fact that it's kind of like it's almost like challenging the audience in the
mhm,
sense of you thought Scion couldn't get weirder. We will make it weirder. We could cyberpunk you up. Like we could do all kinds of stuff here. Uh,
yeah,
how did this come about? Do you have like it's such a great combination of things, but it's so out of left field.
I see now. I'm going to push back. I'm going to say that it's not actually out of left field
Oh, okay.
because it's kind of part of the same tradition that you get out of like the Chronicles of Darkness books, where you had
Hmm.
like dark eras,
Sure.
where different settings. Exalted got to do it back in second edition with Shards of the Exalted Dream.
Hmm.
So I feel it, and I mean Trinity is kind of basically just shards in
Oh
terms
yeah, well
of
Trinity, yeah,
yeah.
that.
So I would say that it doesn't come out of left field. It actually it's just kind of part of the heritage of the game company itself for Onyx Path. And uh I was the instant that Hiromi, uh one of our lead developers, um approached me about it, I was 100% on board. Just because it is so wonderful to be able to really like paint with a blank canvas,
Hmm.
and to find ways to do like genre pastiche without making it like cliche or making it like too flat or boring. And I think for all of the authors on Mythic Shards, for each of the shards that's in the book right now, they really challenged themselves to pull from so many different sources to create something that is kind of lovingly in all of these different genres, but still feels like reliably, immutably Scion.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask us to rewind just a little bit because it occurs to
Sure.
me we haven't even just in case there's anybody in our audience or listening in the future who hasn't heard about Mythic Shards, and I take it as an assumption that everyone knows Mythic Shards at this point. But if you could just give us a little synopsis, what are we dealing with here?
Sure. So Mythic Shards on backer kit right now.
Do it. Do it.
Go back it. We dare you. Um,
Wait, you're not afraid, are you? Come on.
Mythic Shard Mythic Shards is a supplement for Scion Second Edition that is going to, over the course of a few different chapters, look at completely reinventing the setting of Scion, which is called the world, in different like genres and contexts. So you have chapters like After the End, where it is, after not just an apocalypse has happened, but all apocalypses have happened. Because if all myths are true, then so are all apocalypses. Um, and you get to play out like your Mad Max fantasy as all of these scions are now racing to become the first gods of this new broken world. And then you have stuff like Cyber Scion, where It reimagines the world as kind of a cyberpunk dystopia, which is your backdrop for then giant mech fighting kaiju.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Um, yeah, as nature intended.
Yes, of
Um,
course.
uh, you have four color Scion, which goes through like um, obviously four color, like the Silver Age of comic books.
Mm-hmm.
So you have lots of homage to kind of where we actually got heroes like Thor from, but actually having Thor be Thor.
Right.
Um, oh no, I'm forgetting the name of.
How dare you, sir?
Oh, oh no, I've forgotten the middle one.
The middle one.
Uh, like in, I can see it in my head in the middle of the book. Like,
Let me see.
oh,
Shards. Maybe I can.
forgive me. And then the last one is Space Odyssey, which basically you are part of a crew that gets hurled off into a strange region of deep space inhabited by hundreds of different aliens that all seem strikingly familiar in ways that you might not be able to fully recognize. Like they're the creatures of Earth's myth, kind of, almost. They're a little different though. And you are trying to figure out either what's going on in this region called the Tenebrium, or trying to escape it and get back to the worlds themselves.
We've got Jeffrey in the chat keeping us honest here. Farewell to Heroes, a
Farewell to
noir
heroes,
setting.
Jeffrey. I'm so sorry. I will
this
never stop my penance walk.
this is what the show is for: putting people on the spot and embarrassing
Mm-hmm.
them in front of their friends and coworkers. That's what we that's what we mean by meet your makers. It's a far more literal kind of thing than you'd expect.
If
Thank you,
anyone meets
Jeffrey.
me, I'm going to be walking into the sea now.
The Pacific one, just to make it interesting.
Mhm.
You are no longer my best friend. Oh, it happened. It was here that it happened. This is going to be remembered forever.
Yes.
You're going to break Elliott, Jeffrey. Come on now.
I'm
Uh,
already broken,
not until not
devastated.
until the show's over, at least. Uh, so, is this supplement going to be valuable for people to work into existing campaigns that maybe they're doing, or is this more or less something that you're going to have to you have a new one shot or new campaign for?
So all of the shards are kind of aiming at being conceptually broad enough to support their own full campaigns and chronicles. Um, they, I think, are still going to be perfectly fun to run in one shots because you get that good like genre pastiche that people can key into, which I think is so fundamental to being on the same table to get a really good, satisfying one shot. But yeah, they can be done for either of those. There's going to be some uh, trinkets and tools and ideas that I think folks could rip out of just about any of the chapters for their own ongoing games. But for the most part, they are kind of like enticing you to new things, new campaigns, new one shots.
Nice, nice. Any other new projects that you can talk about that you're working on? We're not asking to break into things here.
So I have turned in my drafts for the next big Exalted book called Alchemicals,
Okay.
but I'm not a developer on it, so I can't give any spoilers, except to say, communist space robots are going to be fun. Um,
Oh, I might have to start playing Exalted just for that alone. That sounds
mhm,
wonderful. Okay. All right. All right, alchemicals. I'm paying attention.
mhm.
Would you say that Exalted is kind of your specialty, basically?
Yes, that's where I do most of my work. But then I say that, but I've been on quite a few things on Scion. I was on Scion God,
Mm-hmm.
Titanomachy, and Titans Rising.
Love Titanomachy. That was a great book.
I'm on Rock Gods and Mythic Shards, and I might be forgetting one, but I don't think so, or at least No, I think we're good. So
I think we're caught up. Okay.
yes,
Okay.
I'd have to check my CV.
Well, then as a follow up question, this is one I like to ask, but
Hmm.
it seems that I already know the answer, so I'm going to alter it just a little bit.
Go
Outside
for
of
it.
Exalted,
Hmm.
what is a game that at the drop of a hat you would be able to uh, do a quick one shot for somebody? If you had like four people in your room and they're like, "What's this all about?" and at the drop of a hat with very little prep time, you could just boom and give them a good 2-3 hours of entertainment. Because I got a feeling you were going to say Exalted.
No, no, no. I wasn't going to say
Oh,
Exalted. I
oh,
have an answer. Uh, it has to be for the right group, but it would be Glitch by Jenna Moran because I have run so much of it that uh, if I had the right group, if I had like my core group of Glitch players, like yeah, we could totally just BS our way through that for 3 hours at the drop of a hat. Beyond that, just about any of my favorite Powered by the Apocalypse games
mm-hmm.
because they run so high on protocol. And then I still have a huge affection for Fate, Fate Core specifically,
Sure, yeah.
and yeah, you could pick up Fate and run with just about anything. So,
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not so familiar with Glitch. What are we working with in that game?
uh, if you want a high concept, you are retired void gods who got tired of bringing the apocalypse and are now trying to live in peace with a world that is trying to kill you.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, mysteries keep happening around you. So, despite being, the Pale Rider, who has now given up your horse and sword, you are kind of stuck solving mysteries like a Scooby Doo cast member.
Okay. Okay, so I'm just gonna say it again. I already said it in the show. There's never been a better time to be interested in tabletop games. I love that. That's fantastic. It's so
Hmm.
specific, but I could see where you could really expand on it and really. I think that's kind of a hallmark of a really good game where it is a very specific kind of world they've put you in, but you can still stretch it out, much like
Hmm.
you're talking about with Mythic Shards.
Oh
You
yeah.
can put it in all kinds of different universes. So, oh, that's
Oh,
super
look at
fun.
that. Look at that tying it back
Look at that.
in.
Look at that. Huh?
Uh-huh.
Huh? Pretty good, right?
See what you did there.
I do this for free. Uh, but this is just a passion project. So, what are some projects that you've worked on that you're proudest of? That if like someone came to you and said, "Hey, I want to see a portfolio of like three works that
Mhm.
exemplify what you do and what you do best," what would you say those three would be?
I mean, I would say Sidereals, I've already
Mm-hmm.
touched on. That's definitely in the mix because I'm super proud of everything we accomplished there. Not just myself, but everything that that whole team accomplished because everyone turned in their A game on that one. Um, Probably Exigence Out of the Ashes
Okay.
because I have the dubious honor of being the only person who wrote an entire Exigent type by myself for that book. So the sovereigns are my glittering babies who are they the developers came to me and they said like, "Hey, do you want to write about super powered hologram gem magic flashy glamour disco nerds?" And I was like, "Don't typecast me."
Yeah,
Um
who the hell do you think you are? you you
how
you send that to someone else, friend.
how dare you typecast me with such vicious accuracy?
Vicious.
Um, and I'm actually going to say, even if we weren't promoting it, I would say Mythic Shards
Mythic
because
shards.
I'm, again, I got to do big chunks of the book and I'm really happy with how a lot of it came out and
Mm-hmm.
I learned a lot from it. So hopefully folks will find it useful.
Were there any particular parts in Mythic Shards that you wrote that you can talk about that you were really
Sure.
proud of?
So I wrote the setting material for Cyber Scion,
Nice.
which people have gotten to see the preview of at this point, and responses tend to have been pretty positive, which is always nice. Um, but I also wrote the entire chapter for Space Odyssey, which is going to be the last one that drops on the Backer Kit campaign. Um, but it was one where it was the one that I was actually originally approached for and tapped for, just because I have a great love of like the sci-fi trope of like a crew that's stuck out far away,
Hmm.
and can't get back. So things like Farscape obviously is the big touchstone there, but also Star Trek Voyager, Strange New Worlds a little bit, and in a weird way like Stargate Atlantis
Hmm.
even. Um, oh, and I hate bringing it up because it's such a nightmare fever dream, but even like a weird German Canadian American co-production show called Lex probably lives in my head
Lex.
rent free. Yeah.
Oh, that was a Sci-Fi Channel, right?
Yeah, originally
Yeah.
Showtime, but I think, but yep, sci-fi. Yeah,
Oh my god, I haven't thought of that in forever. Oh, that's hilarious. Now I'm gonna dig something up here. Uh, on the,
it's more horrifying than you remember. So,
I'm sure it is. Most things from that time period are. Uh, on the other side of the coin,
mhm,
when it comes to running games and that sort of
yep.
thing, uh, is there a game that, if for example, if I were to say, hey, it's your birthday, and we're treating you to just a specialty game just for you and your friends and that sort of thing. You just get to play. You don't have to worry about running it or anything like that. Just sit back. We order the pizza and roll some dice. What game would that be? Would be just really relaxing and nice to just play through.
Oh no.
You can look
Oh,
in your
no.
books. You can reference.
You're just asking me like what's on my back pile.
This is Well, I'm getting to that actually. That's the follow up question is what blind spot do you have that you haven't gotten to play yet and you're just dying to get a game going?
Okay, so I will be good and do them in order.
Okay,
Uh, if if I was just trying to relax and I didn't have to worry about running it myself, and I can't say any of the games that I worked on because Exalted would definitely be a contender in that,
sure, sure.
because we're intense. We love it
It's an
to
intense game.
a you know we love it to a dangerous degree. Honestly, and this is going to sound like such a weird choice. I've had so much fun recently playing some campaigns that went all the way back to like cinematic unisystem
Oh
that
wow,
yeah, that
wow,
I would definitely I would be into that.
that's
Um
cool. Okay, okay.
yep. And then blind spots.
Yeah, yeah. I think as writers and gamers in general, we've always got a stack of books of games that maybe we flip through, but we haven't played at all, and they just live kind of like as hypotheticals in our head,
Yes.
So some of them are obvious, some of them are less obvious. So what are some blind spots, some games that you haven't gotten to play yet, but would really like to take off of your haven't played yet list?
I would say to that, I haven't yet gotten to play uh one called Yaziba's Bed and Breakfast that actually I just got the physical copies of.
I love the
Um,
title. I love the title already. So please go on.
so it's by Possum Creek Games,
Hmm.
and it is a diceless game based off the no dice, no master system, and it has a set cast of characters. It's very like positive and emotive, and you are the people who have taken up residence temporarily or otherwise at the bed and breakfast operated by a cranky witch named Yaziba. So
I love it. I love it. Any
that's
any
definitely yeah. Hmm?
any
Go ahead.
others or
Yeah. So if I'm thinking about other things that I've kind of been dying to play, ah,
This just always ends up being like
Yeah.
my chance to write down some games that I can add to my own stack of ones that I haven't played yet. So
I literally just found this afternoon while I was cleaning up a set of tokens that are used for a game called The Clay That Woke by Paul Sedge. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but where you play minotaurs in this strange, like, kind of sword and sorcery setting, and it uses drawing tokens, almost like pulling lots for a really old
ah,
school lottery,
yeah,
as your oracle to figure out like how actions resolve. Uh, and I've never gotten to play it, and I've had it for so long, so that's definitely got to be on the list too. And
absolutely.
then probably The King is Dead is also up there. And that one's by the Bakers. And it is, exactly what it says.
Hmm.
The king is dead, and you are the four or so noble houses that have any sort of claim, and you are vying for the crown through all of these different, like, mini games
Hmm.
that frame these small, like, scene like experiences.
Very nice, very nice. Um, I think one of the things I keep running into with developers, people who've made this a profession, essentially on
Mhm.
some level, um, one of the sadder things I've run into is when you make games part of your professional life, you have less time to play games. Do you have any games you're running right now? Any games you're a part of?
Uh, I can't run Exalted. I'm too busy making Exalted.
Exactly. That's exactly
because
it. It's just it's. I spend so
because
much time thinking about this game that I don't get to play the game.
it uses the same, like, psychic resource inside of your head.
Absolutely, it does. Of course.
Running games right now, I am planning out a few things to do with some friends where it's going to be a series of running through my backlog, especially of like Powered by the Apocalypse stuff that I haven't gotten
Smart.
to try yet. And then playing games, I have been playing Call of Cthulhu with friends, and it's going to transition into a sequel. So we did a Buffy game using Cinematic Unisystem, and that was the one that made me fall in love with being a player again. And we did 2 seasons of that because we did see it very much in like TV mode of like, here's our first season, here's our second season, and we're going to be doing a mini campaign that is 2 seasons and a movie. Um,
Oh, nice, nice. Yeah,
and
I
then that's
love it.
going to lead into a completely separate campaign using uh, our own like hacked cinematic unisystem. So yeah.
Oh, that's fun. That's really fun. Um, what are some of the most underrated games out there right now? Do you think?
Oh, that's a good question.
Like a game that doesn't you think to yourself like I was thinking the other day about Ten Candles, and what a simple, strange, lovely little horror game.
Yeah.
And I just said I went why don't I hear more about this game because this is this you know so stuff like that. Is there anything that pops into your mind?
Honestly, the first thing that pops into my mind is Under Hollow Hills, which is Powered by the Apocalypse one, where you are a traveling fairy circus.
Oh, I love it.
Uh, and literally every session is just you arrive at a new place, you figure out what's going on, you plan out a show, you put it on, and you like figure out how that show helps to break up the issues that are happening in that place.
Oh, that's fun. Like theater
Yeah.
kids make good kind of thing.
Yeah. I've gotten to play it once, and it's one of the ones that's on my list for the series of short campaigns.
Hmm,
Um, and it's one of the things that lives in my head rent free. But
nice,
it doesn't get anywhere near as much discussion as it deserves.
nice, nice. Um, Are there what's a pre-made module or quick start or campaign that you just love to pieces?
Oh, let's see. A pre-made quick start.
This is always a funny question
Yeah.
I found because when I first came up with the list of like potential questions I would ask, I almost didn't include this one because I thought to myself, I'm talking to writers. So, of course, most of the people I talk to are going to be homebrew champions and that sort of thing. And I tried it out, and I remember I forget who one of the first people I tried it out on, but they surprised me, and they were like, "Oh my god, I love a pre-made one." You know, especially if I just don't want to be bothered with coming up with all that other stuff. And sometime, and you know, we're writers, so we're also readers. So you like a good story that you didn't have anything to do with. So I've been surprised. But are there any that stick out in your mind?
I was going to say no because I am a nerd about home brewing my own stuff, and I looked it up now because I wanted to make sure I was saying it right.
Yeah.
There was a collection of like one shots put out called Trilemma Adventures,
Okay.
and they're all just like one page front and back. And it was one of my go-to whenever I was running, and they're system agnostic, so they're kind of built in the like OSR vein of here's an interesting provocative place. Usually it's a little bit of a dungeon delve. There's a little like thrumming thread of metaplot going on in the background, or lore going on in the background. And I have several of those that are like my pick up and play if I'm going to run people through like a fantasy D&D-esque system.
Mm-hmm.
Those are my go-tos for one shots, and I just love that they're able to pack a whole lot of flavor and weirdness and exploration in such a small package of like a page front and back.
Nice. That's nice. Um, Follow up to a previous question. What do you think is the most overrated game, and why is it Dungeons and Dragons?
Pass.
That was
Twitter
never meant.
still
Yeah,
exists. I'm gonna pass.
yeah. That's me. See. I knew you were a smart guy, Elliot. I knew. Um, are there any other projects that you've been working on that are coming up that you'd like to let the world know about?
Oh, this is a good question. I'm trying to remember because the problem with being a writer and a developer is that the timeline of what you've worked on and the timeline of what's going to go out into the world is
Yeah,
so different
it's
because,
crazy.
well, because even once you've finished writing it, it has to go through development, it has to go through approvals, it has to go through editing, it has to go through, you know, release and funding if it's going to do crowdfunding, and errata if it's going to do like feedback from the audience. So I find that for myself, the problem is I have a great difficulty keeping track of what is actually out in the world and what
Mm-hmm.
isn't. Um, I will say, I don't know when Witchford is due to explode out into the world, but hopefully. I
I'm
had a great deal of fun with that, and I
so
know that
glad.
you were a writer on that too. So
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the reaction to that one. That one was a whole lot of fun to play with. So yeah, I'm with
mhm.
you 100% on that.
Yes,
Okay, one last question, Elliot.
shoot.
What? Tell me about a game mechanic that you just love.
Oh, just one?
You can.
How
Oh no, you can tell me about more. You can tell me more.
how can I pick amongst my children?
Yeah.
Uh, okay, so I at the risk of enraging Twitter people,
hmm
I have never really cared for Warhammer, um, the role playing games. I know. Look, I have a degree in poetry. I don't need that kind of addiction too.
There is
My
no
money's limited.
poetry in Warhammer, my friend.
Well, I mean the effect it would have on my wallet.
Oh yes,
Um,
without question.
yeah.
Yes, yes.
But one of the things that I think kind of, again, something that lives in my head rent free is the way magic works for Warhammer Fantasy role playing,
Mhm.
where like your magic stat is the maximum number of dice that you can roll for it, but you don't always want to roll that full number because every double or triple or quadruple that you roll gets like increasingly awful side effects.
Right.
And it's such a simple thing, but it's one of those moments where it creates that like ludonarrative harmony. The experience of playing is also the experience that the character's having, where you're like, I need to marshal enough power to do this, but I also run the risk of losing myself to the
Hmm.
power if I push too hard. I think that's just a wonderfully elegant little mechanic. Even if I don't necessarily like playing the game that it exists within.
Yeah. Yeah. That's I have a similar reaction with the blood mechanic in fifth edition Vampire,
Mhm.
where I I'm much more of a V20 kind of guy, or but all the same, I think I used to have all my little glass beads,
Mhm.
that old ladies put in vases and stuff like that. I had a bunch of those red glass beads, and
I'm
those
in
were.
this photo.
Oh yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Those are the blood
What
tokens, and I miss that. I miss it, but at the same time, I can't deny that the new hunger mechanic is just better. It's just better. It's just a smarter, more intuitive way of doing it.
are you even an RPG fan if you
I,
can walk past like an aquarium aisle and not be like, "Oh,
ooh,
do I need more glass beads?"
what do these represent? What could I use these for? Someone's counting down mana with these next week. Uh, any
Yeah.
others? Any other ones that come to mind, Elliot?
Okay. Other favorite RPG mechanics. Gosh, there's so many interesting options. I'm gonna actually give it to a game called Sleepaway,
Okay.
that used so you are camp counselors at a haunted summer camp, and the camp is specifically haunted by a creature called the Lindworm. No one plays the Lindworm, but to figure out what it does, because it is otherwise a diceless system that's played with like tokens, there is a standard poker deck, and you will invoke the Lindworm, and there are cards that get drawn, and then the whole group kind of interprets them based around like, if you draw this card, then you read it out, and it's like the campers have started, you know, building strange idols out of sticks.
Mm-hmm.
And I have never played a game that created so much atmosphere and tension as that one mechanic did, because the like oracle list that it was based off of was just so well tuned. The way they had written out like the protocol for when you invoke the Lindworm was so atmospheric and so moody, like top tier experience.
I gotta go write that one down too.
Mm-hmm.
Sleepaway. Checking that out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything else come to mind, sir?
I mean, I'm sure if I kept turning my head around,
You could find more.
I could I could keep going
That's
for
totally fair.
hours and hours.
That's totally fair.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what then. Let's wrap it up here. Why don't you tell the folks where they can find you, if you'd like them to find you, etc. Anything you're working on that you'd like a little bit of attention paid to, etc.
Okay. So you can find me on the shambling corpse of the website that was formerly called Twitter at
Mm-hmm.
Elliott M. Freeman. Um, I very rarely post there, but if I have anything new coming out, that'll probably be where it goes. Alchemicals is coming up at some point in the near future, so be on the lookout for that. Um, Beyond that, Mythic Shards is the big one right now. Like, I think people are going to dig it. There's so much content that went into it. I'm really proud of the work that I did. I'm really proud of being able to have gotten to be on the team for it, because, like I said, the other authors just really turned in amazing work. And then our developers, Hiromi and Kim, also were so supportive and so good at helping us like talk through ideas, build a consensus vision, support us through red lines. I just really think it's an amazing book, and I hope people will give it the attention it deserves, but also just find the things in it that are going to connect with them and kind of light them on fire a little.
I love it. I mean, is there any better use for a new TTRPG setting than to just get in there and set fires? I think that's really the best
Yeah.
thing for it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the Scion Mythic Shards is on Backer Kit. The link is in the chat. Please check it out. There's still time to back it. There's all kinds of wonderful little goodies that come with it. So please check it out. And because that support is so important. And we know you're going to play this. Come on. You know you're going to play Kaiju Scion. You know you're going to play
Hmm.
Cyberpunk Scion, Cyber Scion. It's right there. That was done. That
Yeah.
was it. Beautiful. Uh, my name is Phil Keeling. You can find me on the Shambling Corpse that used to be called Twitter at He Makes Monsters, or you can find me at Phil Makes Monsters everywhere else. Check out my book, Juice. It's been called a cross between American Psycho and Sideways. So wine-loving murderers abound. You can also find me on my podcast, Pixel Lit. We are the best podcast about video game novelizations because we are the only podcast about video game novelizations. Look it up. In the meantime, thank you very much, Elliott, for joining me. This is a whole lot of fun.
Glad to be here.
Absolutely. And we're going to see you guys in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I'll see you there. I'll be there. I'll be there. Will you? Huh? See? That was pretty good. I thought that was good. All right. See you guys later. Bye.